Well, greetings from St. John Fisher University, everybody. Dom Tibbetts, Joe Biscali of The Athletic, of course, our leading the charge contributor. Back here, I think, day 10 now of training camp officially it is. After the return of the blue and red scrimmage, Joe, I honestly lose track of the numbers, especially when you start talking double digits. We go back to Sunday's practice. I think that's kind of the big news we have to touch on first. James Cook now appearing to be a hold-in. Caught everybody by surprise. Joe, what was your just instant reaction to that?
Not only did it catch us by surprise, I think it caught the Bills by surprise and most of his teammates by surprise because just asking someone like Ray Davis after practice today, he's like, "Yeah, I didn't know until we were walking on the field, out on the field, honestly." And so when that whole situation comes to pass, it's like, okay, so what is the plan here for James Cook? We all know that he wants a contract extension. I think Brandon Beane. Kind of speaking along those lines to WGR on Monday morning was saying, this is it takes two sort of thing, and I think that's where this whole situation kind of lies. So it's definitely an interesting subplot
Yeah.
to training camp because normally once you report and you start practicing, that's the end of it. You're just working your way toward it. But now this is the pivot point to where, okay, who blinks first is basically what it's coming down to. So are the Bills going to give him a one-year Band-Aid and just kind of up his compensation for this year without doing a long-term extension? Do the two sides finally meet eye to eye? Or does the situation go nuclear? And the potential that, there's only one thing that comes next if they don't, if James Cook doesn't come back to practice, and if they don't have an extension in place or some kind of solution in place, then the initials TR, trade requests, certainly come into play. So we'll see. We're not at that point just yet, but I mean, with the way things go around the NFL, you can't rule anything out.
You mentioned Brandon Beane hopping on WGR 550 this morning. I think the one big takeaway that I had was, again, it would seem like his surprise, though, but he also said in his tenure as the Bills GM, Joe, he hasn't had an experience like this. I think you look around the NFL, there are organizations, I'm just going to pick the Cowboys, right, because of the current Micah Parsons situation, but you go on the nuance of this situation, knowing that this regime has never dealt with anything like that. How much do you think that adds to not just the surprise, but maybe the frustration on the Bills' end?
Yeah, because I think for them, they probably came into camp saying, "Okay, James Cook is gonna be here. He's gonna practice." They said that right at the beginning of the camp, like we expected him because we know James, all of this other stuff. So it had to catch them by surprise a little bit to where this headache that you didn't think was there now exists.
Yep.
And it's just a very delicate situation. I'm extremely intrigued because, like you pointed out, they really haven't had to deal with something quite like this. Like, they've had guys who have had some contract stuff, like Jordan Poyer a few years ago. He won a new deal, and they basically put a Band-Aid on that and just upped his guaranteed money that
Right.
same year. So that's why I'm wondering if maybe that's the solution here. But at the same time, they also really don't have a lot of cap space right now. So they have, like I said, a very delicate situation, and how they handle it will certainly be interesting. But if there's one thing we do know, they really want James Cook on the field, but also they have a really nice backup in Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson has given them a ton of good reps over the time too. So I don't think they're in a rush
Yeah.
to get this thing absolutely hammered out, and I don't think the Bills are going to blank to be like, okay, well, you said you want this, we're going to give you this just to have you practice, because I think really the Bills have all the leverage right now.
And I don't think either of us want to get into too much speculation about why James or his representatives felt like this was the right time in the ninth practice of training camp to start this hold-in. But I also, maybe if I had to just assume one, right, like there's a little bit of injury concern on the offense and defensive side of the ball. But just in general, Joe, at this moment, how concerned are you if you're a Bills fan looking into this situation, knowing where we are at training camp with the injuries on both sides of the ball?
The one injury that really concerns me above all else is just Khalil Shakir, because that's a high ankle sprain. A lot of these other ones that we're talking about, like hamstring injuries, calf injuries, like these are things that there's still a month before the
Yeah.
season starts.
Yep.
So we've got plenty of runway here for them to figure themselves out. Like, and even for instance, like on defense, Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp returned today. Terrell Bernard has been back the past couple of days. Taylor Rapp was out there doing defensive install, so it's not as though he's super far away. And even the Bills kind of alluded to maybe Cole Bishop being ready, maybe not this week, but perhaps for the Bears game. So, like, it seems like there's like an end to a lot of these situations outside of like Maxwell Harrison. But the one key one, because we don't know if Harrison was actually going to start, is Shakir. Because high ankle sprains, if you don't give them the respect that they deserve, they can linger the entire year and they can zap you of a lot of your explosiveness. So I think having the time and space for this to happen, you never want it to happen, obviously, to a receiver.
Yeah.
but having the time and space for it to happen now, maybe he's out the first few weeks of the season. We also know this is a team that's looking at this year going, okay, we care about the first 3 weeks of the season, but also we care more about what happens in January and February.
Right. Joe, before we wrap up, I want to ask you one thing. The last time you talked to my colleague Matt, you were talking about some of the guys that have stood out to you. Osiris Torrance is one that was right big on your radar. I want to ask you the devil's advocate side of the question here.
Okay.
Who's somebody maybe at camp that you felt has been a little underwhelming that maybe you were expecting more out of?
Well, I mean, this one is injury induced, and
Okay,
that's
of course.
Curtis Samuel to me. This is the second straight camp, and he's only had 2 of them with the Bills where he has been on the sidelines, and it does make me question what his future is with the team and whether or not he will stick on the 53-man roster. I don't know if I'm all the way there yet, but he's been out since day 2 and with a hamstring injury, and it's just his injuries seem to sort of linger, and that was his story of last year. From an on-the-field perspective, I haven't been too crazy about the rookie Deion Walker, the 4th-round pick. I think he's a bit raw right now, and I would not be surprised if he begins the year as like a game day healthy scratch guy,
Right.
just because it doesn't offer special teams function. I think there are other defensive tackles on the roster, whether it's TJ Sanders, Dwayne Carter, and certainly the starters in Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver, that you can absolutely justify having him just be learning from the side. I want to see him play with a bit more power, even though he's a huge guy.
Yeah.
I want to see him move people around a bit more. I just think he's a bit rough around the edges, and that's where you need those reps. You need time on task, and I actually think he needs to get a little bit stronger too. Maybe in the lower half. So that would be the one.
And it's funny you bring up Walker too, actually, because it feels like at least our perception. I talked to people around the beat is that Walker, his size immediately has stood out. He's kind of been a feel-good camp story,
Yeah.
but Joe B here is noticing that maybe there are some things about this rookie that aren't going to be good if the Bills necessarily throw him right into the fire. Okay, that is Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic. I'm Dom Tibbs from 7 Sports. We'll talk to you guys soon.